On this week's Vaticano, witness how 32 new Swiss Guard recruits take their oath to defend the Pope. We participate in the March for Life in Rome, which draws ever more people to participate. Pope Francis meets the Harlem Globetrotters, and Raul Castro in private audience. All this plus special Korean paper is introduced as the ideal material for restoration in the Vatican Museums, and we peek inside the bakery of the Pope. All this and more now on Vaticano.
Already in its 5th edition, the annual Italian March for Life took place in Rome on May 10th, boasting thousands of participants. Its message, "For life, no compromise." It coincided with Mother's Day. The goal was to fight pro-abortion legislation, but organizers also want to extend it to protecting people at the end of life.
This year, because of the Italian laws, we are not only focusing on abortion, which is of course the main aspect for the March for Life, but also on euthanasia, because the Italian government has already started to discuss on this project of law, and so we would like to give a strong message to our politicians that we are not expecting them to vote something like that. And so they have to hear also our voice.
The march gives an opportunity to the common people to express their conviction that the right to life is the basis of every other right, also in politics.
People are getting more and more conscious of what's getting on our society. So concerning normal people, it's a good result, and I think also for doctors and people acting in hospitals, it's also an important message because they know that someone is fighting for them, and so that they have the right of conscience to not to do abortion, and also for the management of hospitals, that they are allowed not to have abortion imposed in their hospital, because it's what the government also would like to add.
Rome is the epicenter of the Church, and that's why they feel the Italian March will continue to gain prominence.
Here in Italy, we have the Holy See, and internationally, even from non-Catholics, so evangelical, Protestants, Orthodox, but also Muslims in other countries, the Vatican, so the Holy See, is seen as an important worldwide voice. So the Pope is seen as such, and so this is the reason why they all come to Rome. And in fact, this year we will have a larger presence of international representative of pro-life movements from all around the world, so coming from Australia to Canada, of course many countries in Europe, because they understand that we have to give a worldwide message, and from Rome the word is getting wider and wider.
During his weekly Regina Coeli address earlier in the day, Pope Francis greeted the pilgrims who are in Rome for the event, saying it is important to collaborate together to promote and defend life. The Swiss Guard just welcomed 32 new men into the corps. Events for the new inductees to the Papal Army were celebrated through the first week in May. First, Holy Mass in St. Peter's Basilica in the early morning hours on May the 6th. An opportunity for family members, relatives, and friends of the Swiss Guards to join them in prayer. Final moments to recall the spiritual importance of their work before making an oath to protect the Pope. Vatican Secretary of State Cardinal Pietro Parolin celebrated the Mass, a liturgy enriched by the music of a Swiss choir. That afternoon, the culminating moment, the swearing-in of the new Swiss Guards.
500 years ago, they gave their life for the popes, when 147 guards died during the Sacco di Roma. So we do this every year to swear that also we would give, if it's necessary, our life for the popes.
This happens every year on May the 6th, since on that day in 1527, the sack of Rome took place. It marks the most significant and deadliest event in the history of the Guard. 147 members of these men's predecessors lost their lives while fighting the army of the Holy Roman Empire in defense of Pope Clement VII. Today, they would do the same if the Pope were threatened.
We swear and you swear on God. We swear that we will defend the Pope and that we will obviously do that returning to Switzerland. We not only defend the Pope with deeds, but also from gossip, or when he is criticized, we defend him with words. You remain a Swiss Guard for life.
The ceremony took place in the San Damso courtyard in the Apostolic Palace of the Vatican. They swear with one hand on the flag and one hand lifted up into the air, remembering the Holy Trinity and the three patrons of the Swiss Guard. The new Guard, Bircher, doesn't just follow in the footsteps of other Swiss, his is a direct succession in the family.
I have a special relationship with the Swiss Guard, since my father was a Swiss Guard in the years 1977 to 1979. So even as a small child, I learned what the Swiss Guard does. Also, among my friends, there are a lot of ex-Guards. So I played with the thought of joining since my studies. And when I began my military service, I've already served for some time in the military, so I thought to myself, the culture, the language, and the religion attracts me. So I'll do that. I will dedicate myself for 2 years to the church, so I decided to join them. I've been here for a year and don't regret a single minute of it.
The proximity to the Pope himself also brings its share of surprises.
Our service brings us close to the Pope. One day in the morning, at 4 a.m. after he got up, he came out and he recognized me and said, "Ah, you're here again, on duty." He went back in and gave me a little gift with chocolates and sweets and said, "Per la dolcezza nella vita," for sweetening your life. That made my whole week. That was great.
The Swiss Guard currently consists of 120 men, a reinforced company.
During the meditation of his general audience on a sunny Wednesday, Pope Francis repeated the 3 words that are a help for a happy family life: may I, thank you, and pardon me.
Queridos hermanos y hermanas, la catequesis de hoy.
Today's catechesis is the opening of the door to a series of reflections on family life, real life, daily life. Above this door are written 3 words that we have already used other times: please, thank you, and I'm sorry. These are words linked to good manners in their genuine sense of respect and desire for good, far away from any hypocrisy and duplicity. The word please reminds us that we should be delicate, respectful, and patient with others, including with those whom we are sharing a strong intimacy with. Like Jesus, our attitude should be that of whoever is at the door and knocks. To say thank you, the second word, seems like a sign of contradiction for a distrustful society which sees it as a weakness. Nevertheless, the dignity of persons and social justice happen through an education in gratitude. It's a virtue that for believers is born from the same heart of the faith. Finally, I'm sorry, the third word, is the best remedy to prevent the cracking of our coexistence and to break it. The Lord teaches us in the Our Father that to accept our mistakes and to commit to correcting ourselves is the first step of healing. Spouses, if one day they argue and fight, must never end the day without reconciliation, without making peace.
Nunca el día sin reconciliarse, sin hacer la paz.
Welcome back. This is Vaticano. During his brief meditation before the Regina Coeli prayer on Sunday, Pope Francis spoke of the meaning of the greatest commandment given by Christ to the apostles, to love one another.
Dunque, questa parola del Signore ci chiama.
Therefore, this word of God calls us to love one another, even if we do not always understand each other and do not always agree. But that's where we see Christian love. A love that also manifests itself when there are differences in opinion or character. But there's that love that is greater than these differences, that which Jesus teaches us. It is a love that is new, because it is renewed by Jesus and His Spirit. It is a love freed from egoism that gives us the joy in our hearts. So as Jesus Himself says, I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete.
Gioia sia in voi e la vostra gioia sia piena.
Sunday was Mother's Day, so Pope Francis sent a heartfelt greeting to all mothers present and worldwide. Many groups were present that took part in the pro-life march with banners and flags.
Ora mi rivolgo alle mamme.
Now I turn to all the mothers. Are there some of them here in the square? Are there? An applause for the mommies in the square.
Un applauso per loro, per le mamme che sono in piazza. E questo applauso abbraccia.
And this applause embraces all the mothers, all our dear mothers, those that live with us physically, but also those that live with us spiritually. May the Lord bless them all, and may the Mother of God, to whom this month is dedicated, watch over them all.
Questo mese è dedicato, le custodisca.
On May 7th, Pope Francis spoke to representatives to the sports clubs of Lazio, the region around Rome. Francis praised the club, which is involved in 40 different types of sports, for its focus on different sports disciplines, and said that in Italy, as in his home in Argentina, there is a risk of only talking about soccer and neglecting the rest. A day before, the Pope met with members of the U.S. basketball team, the Harlem Globetrotters. Between snapping pictures and teaching the Pope how to spin the ball on his finger, the team gave him a jersey with the name Pope Francis, along with the number 90. Francis was visibly amused. On May 10th, Pope Francis met Raul Castro as preparation of the Pontiff's visit to the island nation in September. Castro is president of Cuba and the younger brother of Fidel, the leader of Cuba's communist revolution. Castro said he wished to say thank you to the Holy Father for his active role in the development of the improvement of relations between Cuba and the United States of America. He added in comments to journalists that he will start praying again and return to the church if the Pope continues what he has been doing. Francis met with the female head of the Lutheran Church of Sweden, Annie A. Jacqueline. It was a historic meeting since it was the first time a woman archbishop was welcomed with an official audience at the Apostolic Palace. Annie A. Jacqueline is the first female head of the Lutheran Christian Church of Sweden. Francis addressed the Archbishop as esteemed Miss Jacqueline, esteemed sister, and his call for charity. The topic on the agenda was the need for Christian unity among denominations and for better care for the poor. Jacqueline spoke about the struggles of Christians in the Middle East and pointed to the crises of refugees crossing the Mediterranean. Pope Francis received the bishops of the Republic of Congo for their ad limina visit. He urged them to cooperate with other faiths in order to bring about the Church's mission. The Pope emphasized the vitality of the Catholic Church in Congo and the zeal of its pastors in their push for evangelization, referring to 3 new dioceses in the country. He reminded the bishops that the laity needs pastoral help and formation in their witness to the faith. Pope Francis spoke in similar terms with the bishops of Mali. He emphasized the importance of the peaceful coexistence among believers of different religions, the safeguarding of interreligious dialogue, and the common commitment of Christians and Muslims in defense of cultural heritage. Bishops of different nations of Africa have been cycling through as part of their periodic visits to the tombs of the apostles and the successor of Peter.
During this final 28th session of the Human Rights Council here at the UN in Geneva, on the order of the day, the continuing grave deterioration in the human rights and humanitarian situation in the Syrian Arab Republic. The over 4 years crisis amounts to over 220,000 dead, 12.5 million in dire needs of assistance, 7.6 million internally displaced and 3.9 million refugees in the region, many of which are children. During their meeting, the United Nations Human Rights Council adopted a new resolution calling on Syria to allow a commission to continue its work documenting violations and abuses of human rights committed by all parties in the country's conflict, and calls on the Syrian government, Daesh and foreign fighters to halt bloodshed.
The final products of the Human Rights Council are the resolutions. So the last 2-3 days are for decision making on the resolutions proposed by the different member states, the different coalitions. The resolutions don't have an impact in the sense that are creating sanctions or obligations. So when we are here, it seems all the time that we are doing a great blah blah blah, you know, and you are wondering what is then the impact of all this chatting among states and so on. But we think all the same that is important because the United Nations is the only global forum where all the states can come, especially at the level of the Human Rights Council.
The resolution was adopted by 6 votes against and 29 votes in favor.
And our presence, I think, is also appreciated here at the Human Rights Council in a way. Our saying as Catholic NGOs brings a voice that otherwise is lacking at this level. The issue, for example, in all aspects of a violation of human rights, of a victim-centered approach, because we are organizations that are all present in the field, really engage with the people who are struggling, who are suffering. So when we are speaking here, I think the difference is felt in the sense that we have got these people in our heart. We have experienced what they experience. And it's important that this voice on this perspective is here. It's here, not at an academic level or a political level, but on a people-centered level.
At the Palais des Nations in Geneva, the UN held a press briefing at the beginning of May. The UN's Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA for short.
The headline is really that this is a race against time. It's also a race against a moving target, in the sense that we still do not have a full assessment of the needs and the requirements in the rural areas outside of Kathmandu.
Many of the humanitarian aid did not reach the country, prevented by logistical problems.
There have been many flights on the way to Kathmandu who have been forced to return simply because there was no way that they could land. We can confirm now that there are 21 teams which are in country now, and there are several more on standby waiting to come in. The message that I get from our staff there is that the preparations that we have done for a very long time with the Nepalese, both civilian and military authorities, are paying off.
Health workers say they feared a major health crisis was unfolding among survivors of the quake, who are now living in the open or overcrowded tents with no access to sanitation or clean water.
We're particularly concerned at the present time about life-threatening injuries, including head injuries, spinal injuries, what we call crush syndrome, and obviously fractures and so on.
Efforts to distribute aid are proceeding at a slow pace. The delay stems in part from the extent of damage caused by the quake and interruptions from strong aftershocks.
Welcome back. You are watching Vaticano.
A moment of mutual cultural enrichment. In the Vatican Museums, traditional Korean paper called hanji is being presented as a new material for restoration work of all kinds.
A group of senior mentors and a group of restaurators have experimented with pieces of paper made from the mulberry tree, called hanji paper, that was made by particular methods. It is similar to the Japanese method, but still all its own, a Korean style. The experiments were made on different things, on books, on photographs, and on pieces of art on paper. The paper is already well known and used in the USA and in England, and is not widely known yet in Europe, in Italy, France, or Spain. So our intention is to give the possibility of choice of other materials than the common ones. The more we have at our disposal, the better it is. This is a very resistant paper. The fibers are not laid in a specific direction, that is, for some restoration works, very useful. For example, for tracing papers.
Per esempio, per le carte da lucido, le tracing papers. This is the first time in the Vatican and in Italy the unique material is employed. It's the result of years of experimentation.
The Vatican Museums have a variety of laboratories for painting, marble, fabrics, metals, and different materials for the ethnological field of research, and this paper laboratory. This paper laboratory has experimented with Korean paper materials and has presented it in London during an international conference. Since we, as an independent country, are an international forum, we wanted to present this research for the topographical area of Italy. This is also interesting for the countries involved. That is why the Korean ambassador has joined us today, who is using the exchange to present this special Korean paper in this context.
The ambassador of Korea to the Holy See, Kim Kyung-suk, and the ambassador of Korea to Italy were among the audience, consisting mainly of researchers and specialists of many artistic fields.
We attach great importance of preserving cultural heritage. I mean, the culture is the sort of the humanitarian asset to everybody in the world, and the hanji paper is mainly used for restoring and conserving those kind of valuable cultural heritage.
Experiments will continue, and the material could shortly be introduced on a large scale for restoration purposes.
Fresh bread, smells that remind us of home, family, and the simple joy of a shared meal. Since 1930, this small bakery just a stone's throw from the Vatican has been preparing and serving homemade bread to the popes. Known to Romans as El Panettiere del Papa, or the Pope's baker, Angelo Araconi carries on a tradition passed down through 3 generations.
Our greatest joy has been serving all these popes and knowing that our bread has made them happy. This is the greatest honor. It's a blessing.
From an early age, Angelo witnessed this happiness firsthand when he delivered his first loaf of bread to Pope John XXIII, affectionately known to locals as the Good Pope.
I remember the first time I met Pope John XXIII. I was so excited. I remember running back to the bakery and telling my father with so much joy and enthusiasm, Dad, I spoke to Pope John XXIII. My father immediately replied, "What did you tell him?" I told him a lot of things. I can't remember everything. My father replied, "Son, catch your breath. What did you tell him?" "I'm not sure," I responded. "I can't remember, but I spoke to him. I must have said something about school, the bakery. He was so nice, and he was happy when I gave him our bread."
This childhood experience allowed him to appreciate and embrace a lesson taught by his grandfather.
Bread is part of our lives. It's part of the Christian value. You can never get tired of eating bread. When you feel sick, a piece of bread is sometimes all you want to feel better. It's also part of our beliefs as Christians. When we break and offer the bread to one another, that's by far the most important element of our lives. Whoever asks for bread, we have the responsibility to give it. It would be a grave sin not to do so. This is something that I learned as a child from my parents, Whoever asks for bread, you must give it to him.
Pane hanno diritto tutti.
Living and working by this principle, Angelo enjoys serving everyone who walks through the door. Clients range from tourists to locals, including cardinals that live in the area. They too may become one day the most revered client of this man, the Pope's baker.